really want to hone in on is how did you make becoming a pro boater work, or whether there's such a thing as a pro boater, I'm not 100% sure, but certainly go and make the lifestyle you've had for the past, I'm guessing what must be 20 years. How have you pieced that together for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I am one of the really lucky ones that was able to make a living off of paddling. You know, and it was a combination of definitely making films and paddling. And you know, I think that it's really hard in this sport to actually to get money from sponsors and to make a living off of it. I mean, I'd say that there's probably under 10 people in the world maybe that are, you know, fully making a living off of whitewater kayaking. That's just a guess, but it's somewhere in that zone. And for me, you know, I think I sort of approached it from the perspective of going after the sponsors that I knew could pay me money, and you know, was able to sort of put together 4 or 5 solid sponsors that, you know, were each paying me a good amount of money that I could make a living on every year. And in addition to that, I also made kayaking movies along the way, which I would also get the sponsors to pay money for. And then also I lived through the DVD era, which is long gone, but that was also a way I could sustain, as well as each year coming out with a new film and selling that. And so just combination of those things made it sustainable. And then there was a period of time too, about like a 5-year period, where I was actually just making enough money just off of being an athlete to sort of travel and sustain myself. So that's kind of shifted now towards, as we talked about a little bit before the podcast, I'm definitely gravitating more towards adventure filmmaking and producing, directing, you know, trying to kind of make that more the priority, although I do still have sponsors and I'm still, you know, still very active with kayaking, just kind of shifting a little bit in terms of what I want my, you know, main focus and priorities to be.
Yeah, I get that. And we're definitely going to circle back to making documentaries and films and stuff like that in a second. One of the things that I became very aware of, having had a few sponsors in my time, is that if you're not careful, you can end up kayaking for the sponsors as opposed to for yourself. How did you go about balancing that demand of the sponsor, because they obviously want their chunk of change back from you, and then pursuing the goals and dreams that you've got?
Yeah, I just always looked at the demands of the sponsors. For me anyway, it's always been a pretty small, like, it hasn't been that huge of a sacrifice, you know? Like, I mean, I've been through a number of kayak sponsors, and that's sometimes the hardest thing, is when there's another boat out there that you can't paddle and that is better than the boat you've got. And so I struggled with that sometimes, but at the end of the day, I always had to remind myself that, you know, by sticking with the sponsor I was with, I was able to make a living and I didn't have to do something else. So for me, most of the sacrifices have been really not, you know, haven't felt like too much of a burden, but the last few years, and the reason I've kind of shifted away a little bit is because I have started to become a lot less enthusiastic about social media and just the kind of feeding frenzy that goes on with just like the constant sort of feeling like you need to be putting yourself out there and tagging your sponsors and you know, being current and running big waterfalls or whatever it is that you need to do to get the likes and the attention. And I'm not knocking it. I think it's great depending on kind of like where you're at in your career. I guess for me, I kind of was growing a little tired of it. And so a couple of years ago, I kind of decided that it was time to sort of transition. And it's kind of interesting because now this year I'm sort of now like fired up again. It's sort of like the stoke is kind of rekindled. So I guess it's it kind of comes in waves a little bit. But yeah, to answer your question, like I guess I'm at a point now where I have, you know, I'm more excited about doing the trips that I kind of want to do, focusing on the rivers at all, like doing it more for myself, more for fun. And, you know, still having some sponsors and support along the way, but not having it sort of be this kind of all encompassing, thing like it was for me for so long.
One of the questions I get asked the most, especially from a younger audience, is how do I get sponsored? And one of my things is often I say, you maybe don't want to get sponsored. That's always a first thing. Consider it. But as it is a question that comes up on a ridiculous basis, what's Rush Sturgis's top tips for getting a sponsor?
I mean, it's so cliche, but I mean, just relentless practice. I think, if you want to be the best at something or at the top of a field, you have to dedicate so much time and energy and focus. And if you do that and you really love what you're doing, the money and the sponsors will ultimately follow. And I guess it takes a little bit of luck as well too. And I mean, for me, it was, it was winning a competition when I was 18 and at the Junior World Championships. And like it was kind of like an instantaneous in for me with a lot of sponsors. And, so I was kind of lucky to just, and even if you win a big competition, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to, that sponsors are going to be attracted. I think that you have to do a lot of self-promotion and, I guess the best thing that you can do is really make them happy and make them see that, that they're getting a return out of your performance. And I guess in this day and age, you don't even necessarily have to be at the top of the athletic field, although it's good if you are, but if you're just really good at creating content and telling stories and getting out there, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to make this lifestyle work. I mean, I have, good friends who are lawyers and nurses and some of the best kayakers in the world, like there's other ways to sustain this lifestyle. And it doesn't necessarily have to be from, having sponsorship support. In fact, you could argue it might be better in other ways, because it's such a grind, honestly, to really make it work. And there's not a lot of money, to be honest, not in this sport anyway.